Hello. People are very confused by musical modes, and I don't know why. They take a little bit of wrapping your head around, and it can seem like a completely pointless concept, but when you figure out that it isn't, they're absolutely awesome. Musical modes are based on scales, but they vary those scales to the extent that however many notes that you have in a scale, you've got that many modes. In the previous video, and I'll put a link up above, we talked about the diatonic scale, and in particular we talked about the major scale. Well, there's another way we can describe the major scale, which is to call it the Ionian Mode. The Ionian Mode is the first mode of the diatonic scale. If we play 7 notes from C up to C, we have the major scale. If we take those exact same 7 notes but start from D, we have the D Dorian scale. D Dorian is the second mode of the diatonic scale. They contain exactly the same notes. There's D Dorian for you. So I'm playing a D. If I move this down here a little bit so that we can see the keyboard. There we go. The reason I'm doing that is because when you switch keys, the best thing to do to reorient your ear is to pedal on the root. Bang, 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 bang. We're now in D. We feel like we're in D. We're not in C anymore. We're not going to play a C for a while. Now, when we step up from there, see, it kind of hangs. It suspends. It doesn't feel as centered or as homely as the major scale. Nothing beats the major scale in terms of the moment, but that doesn't mean to say that your other modes don't have real value. If you find the right notes, then you can find scales that melodies or harmonies or chords that really work. Everything that I'm playing here is in D Dorian. And it has a completely different flavour, a completely different colour. The only way you learn what each of the different modes does is by playing it a lot. Trying chords in there, trying solos. And you get to learn what kind of flavour that scale has. So what's happened? How have we been able to play exactly the same 7 notes but have a completely different sound? Well, the root note is absolutely key. Where you start informs the rest of the scale. When we were in C, and I'm going to fall back to C now, so that's our new root note. To play a scale in C major, we go whole tone, semitone, whole tone, semitone. From this point onwards, I'll just say tone. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. When we play a Dorian scale, we have a different structure. Now, from the root, we've got a tone, that's correct, but the next note is only a semitone up. If we'd have been playing a major scale, we would have stepped up a tone at that point, but we didn't. We stepped up a semitone instead. Root, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, tone. Have a look down here at the spacing of the intervals of that scale, and you can see there's our first tone, and then we step up a semitone. But then we've got 1, 2, 3 tones, and there's our semitone. Now from here we wrap around a tone and then another tone and there's our semitone. So remember, one of the two definitions of the diatonic scale was that it has to be maximally separated. The semitones have to be maximally separated. Well, have a look at the spacing of the two semitones in the Dorian scale. If we start from a note immediately after a semitone, we won't get confused or go wrong. If we start from this F, 1, 2, 3 tones, there's your semitone. 1, 2 tones, there's your semitone. 3 tones, 3 and 2, 3 and 2, 3 and 2, 3 and 2. That's why the Dorian mode is a diatonic scale. So that's D. What happens if we set our root at E? We go up to the third mode, and this is now E Phrygian. E Phrygian is played on all the white keys. Here's E. We need to get the E like rooted in our brain, and now we can play. See how exotic that sounds? Osric Tentacles love the Phrygian scale. It's sad. Why did I just call that scale sad? It feels sad. It's mournful. Why? Let's have a look at the intervals between the chord tones of the scale. Remember when we talked about diatonic scales? We said one of the defining characteristics of the diatonic scale is the strength of its chord tones. Well, what are the chord tones of the Phrygian scale? Here's our root. Minor third, major third. We have a minor chord stuck in the scale. Now, when we play the first, the third and the fifth, we're playing a minor chord. So the Phrygian mode is a minor mode. Go back to Dorian for a second. D, F, A. There's the root, minor third, major third. Dorian is a minor scale. C, E, G, happy. D, F, A, sad. E, G, B, sad. Let's do the next one. F. The fourth mode is Lydian. F Lydian has all white keys. F, A, C. Happy. The Lydian mode is a major mode because the difference between F and A is 4 semitones, or a major third. It's the third that defines whether or not the scale and the chord underneath it is major or minor. From the root to the third of the Lydian mode is a major interval, and then we go up a minor third to get to the fifth, and we've got F major, and this goes on all the way up the scale. Next mode, G Mixolydian, the fifth mode, G. Let's play this. Let's root ourselves in G. Bing, 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 bing. Let's play the G Mixolydian scale. And now we'll play. What chord do we get when we play the triad? G, B, D. It's a major chord. Mixolydian's major. Next one's a doozy, the A natural minor or Aeolian mode. Here's our root. That's the minor scale. So when we played C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, we had the C major scale. The sixth mode of that scale is the A minor scale. A, C, E, A minor. Finally, we have the most exotic of the scales, which is the the 7th mode, which we're going to start from B, because we've just stepped up each of the notes of the C major scale, and then once we're there, we switch to a different mode. Now we're in B Locrian, and this has the most complex sound of all the 7 modes. The reason is that when we're based in B, if we play a first, a third and a fifth, that's a diminished chord. It's the only instance in any of the 7 modes where when we play a first, a third and a fifth, we get neither a major chord nor a minor chord. Let's have a look why. Here's our B. D is 3 semitones away. F is 3 semitones away from D. So we have a root, a minor third, minor third. It's the only instance of any of the 7 modes where we stack 2 minor thirds on top of each other. That gives us a diminished chord, which is a dissonant chord. If we go back to C major for a moment, you'll always find a diminished chord somewhere. It's actually on the 7th. So if we stack thirds together in C major as C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished. It's always the same 7 chords. Switch to D Dorian. You're going to get exactly the same 7 chords, just from a different starting point. D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, C major. When you think about it, if you're constrained to the white keys and you're always playing exactly the same pattern, of course you're always going to get the same 7 chords. There's no escape. In E Phrygian, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, C major, D minor. There's nowhere else to go. We're not playing any of the black keys, and we're always separating our white keys with 1 space. But the most important thing to note is that these scales sound radically different to each other. E Phrygian bears no resemblance to C major, even though it uses the 7 notes. Because when you do that, when you base your ear here, and then you play all the white keys, that sounds nothing like the C major scale. So that's the modes of the diatonic scale covered. But what happens when we break the second rule of diatonic relationships and we don't have our semitones maximally separated? Well, it turns out there are any number of 7 note scales that you can have. A couple of them are really central and very significant for musicians. They're the harmonic minor and melodic minor scales. And in the next episode, we'll talk about how we can extend the concept of 7 note scales, keeping the idea of modes. We can have 7 modes of other scales. There are 7 modes of the harmonic minor scale, and we get ever increasing levels of complexity and richness to our songwriting palette. Hope you'll join me then. If you subscribe and hit notifications, you'll find out when that episode comes out. Hope to see you then. Thanks very much for watching.